Healing fam, welcome to Healing Not Healed, where we will talk about all things mental health and holistic wellness in a very transparent and culturally competent space. So this week I wanted to talk about projection. I know I talked about projection a little bit about 2 weeks ago when I was talking about how I was projecting my conceptualization or perception of a situation, and I wanted to go a little bit deeper into what is projection and what does that look like. Projection is a defense mechanism. It's often brought up in CBT. It is a cognitive distortion or a thinking error. It's a defense mechanism where we unconsciously attribute our own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or behaviors, our own insecurities onto someone else, and essentially seeing their flaws and their desires as our own. It's a way to protect the ego from dealing with unacceptable or shameful or painful aspects of oneself. I said before in a previous video, the ego does not like to be perceived. Instead of acknowledging our own traits, individuals attribute that to other people or a group. So what's an example of this? Someone who's insecure might perceive others as being very critical of them. So very self-conscious, very in their head about themselves. Another example is someone who is often jealous. They might perceive their partner as being unfaithful even without the evidence, just because of their own insecurities within themselves. So why do people project? Avoid confronting uncomfortable feelings or traits. Again, it would cause people to do a lot more self-reflection. And again, the ego doesn't like to be perceived. So instead of doing that kind of, why do I think this way or why do I feel this way, we tend to that instinctual thought of like shaming or doubt or whatever those kind of negative emotions that come up about someone else's behavior, that we tend to, what would I do in other people's shoes? What would I do in that situation? And so those emotions of I wouldn't do that because becomes that subconscious projection of shame, right? If I have body image issues and I don't like parts of my body and I see someone wearing something confidently about something, I might unconsciously project that they shouldn't be wearing that because it's something that makes me feel uncomfortable. It's to maintain a positive self-image. Instead of saying, I have attributes of my body that I don't like, I should eat healthier, I should get in the gym, I should do X, Y, and Z. It becomes more about that person. So that reduces anxiety. So if I can project blame or shame to someone else instead of doing the introspection of why I feel that way, that decreases the anxiety of change. We don't like change. A lot of lack of self-reflection is because it would require change, and it makes people uncomfortable, right? If you have to assess your diet, you have to assess your movement and things like that, it will require a level of discipline and change in your life. And so, again, instead of kind of doing that internal work, it's a lot of projecting and insecurities kind of being sent in other people's direction. So one underlying reason again, for projecting is to avoid shame. And I wanted to talk a lot about that conversation because I think the topic of shame prevents a lot of people from being comfortable within themselves doing things that they see other people doing. And I can use clothing as an example, but I'll go into others. Let's go back into the example of someone being insecure who may perceive others as being critical of them and experiencing shame. Shame is, by definition, shame is unpleasant emotion that can cause feelings of worthlessness and distrust and exposure. It's a very vulnerable feeling to embrace and accept the feeling of shame. And so a lot of people avoid the feeling of shame. Again, projecting is one way of doing that, but a lot of our cognitive distortions actually are defense mechanisms to prevent further shame, rationalizing, justifying, things like that. And so it can be triggered by actions that violate our personal values, beliefs, or by trauma. Even if it's not the individual's fault, shame can manifest in different ways, including social anxiety, low self-esteem, and poor body image. So let's take this back to the conversation of the opinion people have about women and how they dress generally, just overall. It's always a conversation of discussion. How women dress is always a constant conversation of a discussion. I don't care what era or decade you are coming from. But you often hear she's too old to wear that, or these girls left nothing to the mystery, and these girls are supposed to be role models, and I wouldn't be caught dead wearing that, and those girls don't love themselves, and she must be traumatized, she must have experienced something. All the things you can imagine as to why a woman decides to wear what she decides to wear. And seeing as a lot of women have been made to shame their own bodies due to being compared to Western standards of beauty for decades, it's become almost instinctual to have and create an opinion about what another woman is wearing. You'll see a lot of conversations online with people having opinions, older women, aunties, we call them the aunties, and things like that, that have a lot of criticism and conversation about women per se in the music industry and how they dress. These opinions are based on colonialism and on the social construct and biases that we have been indoctrinated into. So what is a social construct? On one hand, as Black people, we acknowledge that colonialism and its impact on culture in the African diaspora, and we want to embrace and acknowledge our culture and heritage in some ways, and then we want to shame ourselves and others, including how our native cultures and some of our native cultures were not dressing modestly. They embraced nudity, and there was normalcy with having breast exposed. It was seen as part of a culture without being sexualized or judged. Again, these are social constructs that colonialism and Christianity has indoctrinated within our culture that we have embraced. So when we say, well, it's different times, that's based on us accepting those social constructs and deciding to embrace the colonialism in Christianity and the indoctrination of that culture of shame against women. And that's perfectly fine. Every woman has a right to their opinion, but that shame was placed on you because you did not have it at birth. We were all born naked. And so shame, again, is a concept that we developed over time about our bodies. So we project that these women should be ashamed of themselves for wearing certain things because we would feel shame if we were to wear some of those things. And so we like to, again, I think in some aspects, victim blame or take the accountability off of men by utilizing safety and victimization and assault as a reason or pretty much it is an excuse of why women shouldn't wear that, instead of holding sexual predators accountable. The accountability is always placed on the woman and what she's wearing. Another example of shame is, again, I talk a lot about social media and the concept of other people just kind of like living out loud in a sense. Because in my opinion, not everybody wants to be a content creator or influencer. Some people are just very transparent about what's going on in their lives and love creating. And so even that aspect in itself, I think there are people who aspire to be more open and vocal and expressive online. But again, some of the judgment that we project onto other people, like, oh, she looks ridiculous, or her quality isn't that, or even workout videos, oh, she's squatting wrong, or she has, again, this is stuff I'm saying again to myself on even things that I acknowledge of like why fear might come up for me with shame, right? And things that I've had to, again, cognitive distortion, whether they're true or not, are they relevant to me and why should I care? But a lot of things of what we think about and fear of shame of what our ego will experience if we were to live more out loud. What people have an opinion about what I'm doing or what I'm saying or how I feel. And so a lot of people are on that edge about whatever business decision or creating content or writing that book or getting in the gym or whatever the big goal or whatever the dream is. Shame sometimes, going back to school, getting that license, getting that degree, a lot of shame prevents us from making that next step because that fear of failure, that fear of not succeeding or being seen as inadequate, or a lot imposter syndrome. Again, all of this rooted in the ego wanting to protect itself. And so we keep ourselves small by, again, if you can recognize that you are coming from a place of judgment of others and can acknowledge that maybe sometimes I am being judgmental of others and that is why I'm so self-critical of myself, you can start to kind of rationalize that a lot of people's opinions are not our own, nor our responsibility to hold, right? So, even if you do feel ridiculous online, or you do feel ridiculous with having a certain passion or dream, it seems ridiculous because you may feel that if someone else was doing it, they may or may not succeed and they look ridiculous. So again, it's not their responsibility to make us feel a certain way. However, we come from a place of what will we do in their shoes, and sometimes we have to acknowledge that we are judgmental and self-critical of others because we're judgmental and self-critical of ourselves. And sometimes taking that next step is showing yourself some compassion, so showing yourself some grace and humanity, and then you can hold that place for other people, and even acknowledge when you are being judgmental and projecting onto other people, like, okay, that was a nasty thought. That was uncool, right? Like, you're not going to be perfect all the time and catch it all the time, but you might catch like, oh shit, why did I feel that way? Did I say that? Why did I think that? Right? So what is the psychological impact of projecting onto people? While it can be a way to cope with difficult emotions, it can also lead to misunderstandings, strained relationships, and difficulty in accurately assessing our own feelings and behaviors. The more you kind of project onto others, it does create a lot of tension and shame within yourself, and a lot of self-criticism for yourself. And so I just invite people to have that self-talk, have that conversation with self when you recognize you're being judgmental and critical of others. Is there a space, or is there a part of you that is self-critical and judgmental of yourself, right? Again, and this can be in anything. This can be in in the work field, in the relationships and friendships, and again, social media. It can be tied to a lot of things. We all do it. We all subconsciously and consciously, if you become aware of it, do it. And does it stop all the time? No, but it's something that you can be aware of. Again, it's not some huge phenomenon, but it's something that we can put a word onto so we can better understand ourselves in a place of where we're coming from and how we're communicating our feelings to other people, and just being mindful of ourselves and our thoughts. So I hope that was helpful. This is to embrace self-compassion and grace within ourselves, so again, that we can extend that to others and do less projecting, being less self-critical of ourselves, and just giving each other some grace. Again, if you want more content about mental health and holistic wellness, different concepts, different conversations, and again, how life applicable situations that apply to ourselves and our culture, you can go ahead, like, share, subscribe, and go ahead and drop a comment. What are your thoughts? Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Again, and then you can also meet me on Sundays for Sound Healing Sundays on Instagram, 8 p.m. live every week. Thank you again, Healing Family.